Hi, my name is Paul. I'm fast approaching 46 years of age. I've been on young tissue extract now for about a year and a half. I was given it originally following a 2-year episode where I suffered a chronic nervous breakdown coupled with manic depression. The doctors had me on mirtazapine, fluoxetine, temazepam, lorazepam, basically anything ending in a PAM, and it really did nothing for me. The anxiety was just horrific. The depression was just all-encompassing, and a friend of mine who's a doctor in Australia happened to send me a bottle of young tissue extract, and within a couple of weeks I'd come off of all the medication. My anxiety levels just leveled out. I've literally not had a down day since. So that was my first encounter with young tissue extract. But the really incredible things happened later on. In week 7, I experienced what is commonly known as retracing, and this came from an accident I had back in September '97, where I broke my left leg. It was a spiral fracture of the tib and fib, and my leg folded right up to my hip. The hospital wanted to amputate the leg, but I wouldn't let them. And the only thing they could do was to put it in a big cast. There was no bone left to pin or plate, so it was just cross your fingers and hope for the best. Well, after 12 months in plaster, the bone finally knitted together, but when they removed the plaster, they found that they'd set my foot 45 degrees off to the left. As a therapist, I use my own quantum healing techniques, and I've managed to get my foot back to within about 10 degrees. And a few years later, I did the 3 Peaks Challenge, just to prove that I could, because they told me I'd be crippled for life unless I had another operation where they rebroke the leg, put it in a big Russian caliper with the metal spikes and everything, but they said it was a 50-50 chance that it might not knit, and then they would definitely have to amputate. So for the past 10 years I've had this functioning leg, but the ankle was kind of like 3 times the size of my right ankle, where the bone had overcompensated and just formed this big lump of bone. I had no discernible shin. It was just a big flat fascia of bone, and in the cold it hurt like crazy, and it just never felt, it felt like somebody else's leg had been glued onto the end of mine. Well, like I said, within week 7, I think it was, I went through a retracing, which is where there's something in amino boosters that triggers the body to break down anything that's not right in your body. I think it's fibroclasp molecules. And it was obviously starting to pick apart the bone that had been placed down wrong in my ankle, and for about 4 days I couldn't walk. I was back on crutches after 12 years of not having to be on crutches, which was weird. But on the 4th day the pain stopped, and when I examined my ankles, they are literally identical. So that was the second thing that happened. The third one happened in month 7. I was driving the car, and again I went through a retrace where something happened in my right hand. I was holding the steering wheel and it just seemed to pop, and I couldn't hold the steering wheel, and the pain was so intense for about 2 or 3 days. But then when the pain stopped, I looked at my hand, and this is the hand that I broke this bone here when I was about 14 playing rugby. It never healed right then, and then I broke it about 12, 13 years ago, again in the same place doing martial arts. And where the bone had snapped, it had healed like that, so I had a big lump of bone on the back of my hand. And I don't know whether the camera can pick that up, but you can see that that bone is now perfectly straight. The next thing that happened, I got diagnosed with periodontal disease about 4 years ago, pockets in the gums and deterioration of the bone in the jaw. I there was 3 different dentists in our area that all, you know, gave the same diagnosis, periodontal disease. And for the last year, I haven't been to the dentist at all. And I went about 6 weeks ago, and the dentist, his brand new dentist, he did a recheck on everything, did x-rays, and bearing in mind that in the 2 months building up to this appointment, I've been getting really stabbing pains in my jaw and my teeth, which is what triggered me to want to go and have a checkup at the dentist. But when he'd finished, he said, "Your teeth are fine, there's nothing wrong." And he said, "I'll take an x-ray." And I asked him, I said, "Well, what about the periodontal disease?" And he just looked me in the face and said, "You don't have periodontal disease." And when the x-rays came back, there was no deterioration in the bone. So it had obviously rebuilt a lot of the bone that had been lost due to this disease. And yeah, that's my experience of amino boosters.